Gorilla smashes glass when baby cries. What he was really trying to do shocks everyone. The air inside the primate conservatory was heavy with the humid, suffocating promise of rain, a thick moisture that clung to the skin and smelled sharply of crushed eucalyptus leaves, wet moss, and damp, turned earth. Under the artificial, sweeping canopy of the sanctuary, the fading afternoon lighting cast long, jagged shadows across the enclosure, painting the rough concrete and synthetic vines in harsh, unforgiving strokes of amber and bruised purple. Against the reinforced acrylic glass, a nightmare was unfolding in agonizing, heart-stopping slow motion. Quito, a 400-pound silverback gorilla known for a temperament as gentle as a slow-moving river, was roaring. It was not the rhythmic, chest-beating territorial display of a primate establishing dominance. It was a visceral, soul-tearing sound of absolute desperation that vibrated through the very floorboards and rattled the teeth of anyone standing near. His massive, leather-calloused fists slammed into the multi-layered polycarbonate with terrifying, concussive force. The sound was deafening, a rhythmic, booming thunder that caused spiderwebs of white fracture lines to bloom across the supposedly unbreakable barrier. On the other side of that splintering glass stood Sarah, a seasoned primate keeper trembling in a rain-slicked nylon jacket, clutching her fiercely weeping 3-month-old infant, Leo, to her chest. The baby's cries were a high, needle-thin shrieking that cut through the humid air like jagged wire, a sound of pure distress. Visitors had already fled. Emergency alarms were blaring their piercing, rhythmic warnings, and the bitter, metallic scent of human adrenaline and cold fear entirely overwhelmed the sweet smell of the surrounding tropical flora. Quito threw his massive, muscle-corded shoulder against the glass, his dark eyes wide, his wide nostrils flaring as he fixed an unblinking, agonizingly intense stare entirely on the screaming child. He was trying to break out. Or, at least, the primal instinct of every human in that echoing room screamed that a wild beast was trying to reach a vulnerable target. But the astonishing truth behind Quito's terrifying display of power would soon shatter everything we thought we knew about the boundaries of interspecies empathy and the profound depths of animal intuition. Before we dive into the incredible revelation of what Quito was truly trying to achieve in that storm-lit sanctuary, take a moment to settle in with us. If you appreciate deep, emotional journeys into the hidden lives of the natural world and stories that challenge our understanding of animal intelligence, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel so you never miss an adventure. We love connecting with our global community, so right now, down in the comments, tell us where you are watching from and what time it is there. Your presence here makes these profound stories possible, and we are so grateful to have you walking this path with us. To truly understand the chilling intensity of that rainy afternoon, one must first understand the profound, almost telepathic foundation of trust that had been built between Quito and Sarah over a decade. The sanctuary, nestled deep in a coastal valley that frequently trapped the misty, petrichor-scented morning fogs, was Quito's entire world. Sarah had been his primary caretaker since he was a frightened juvenile newly rescued from poachers. Back then, her hands always smelled of sweet papaya, warm hay, and safety. Her voice was a soft, melodic hum that routinely calmed his adolescent anxieties. Over the years, their bond had transcended the typical boundaries of keeper and animal. They communicated in the quiet, sophisticated language of the heart, reading micro-expressions, feeling the shifting weight of a stance, and understanding the subtle softening of Quito's deep mahogany-colored eyes. When a violent, howling hurricane had knocked out the sanctuary's power 3 years prior, casting the enclosures into terrifying, absolute darkness, Sarah had sat outside his habitat through the freezing, sleet-battered night. She had pressed her forehead against the frigid glass, radiating a silent, steadfast warmth, while Quito pressed his massive hand against hers from the inside, anchoring each other through the storm. Now the atmosphere of the sanctuary was painted in the dimming, storm-filtered light of a tempest, and their lifelong peace was entirely shattered. Sarah had just returned from her maternity leave, bringing little Leo to meet the gentle giant who had been such a cornerstone of her adult life. She had anticipated a peaceful introduction, a moment of quiet recognition filled with soft grunts of approval. Instead, the air had grown thick with a sudden, unexplainable tension. The moment Sarah had walked through the heavy double doors into the viewing area, carrying the infant wrapped in a thick, knitted woolen swaddle, Leo had begun to fuss. It started as a low, uncomfortable whimper, but rapidly escalated into a piercing, unyielding wail that echoed endlessly off the high, condensation-slicked glass walls. The situation deteriorated with terrifying speed, morphing from a stressful moment into a full-blown crisis. Sarah, deeply sleep-deprived, her eyes ringed with the heavy purple shadows of maternal exhaustion, rocked the infant frantically, her heart hammering against her ribs. She checked his position, shifted his weight, and tried to soothe him with a familiar lullaby, but the baby's cries only grew more ragged and frantic. On his side of the barrier, Quito's demeanor shifted drastically from calm, curious observation to severe, agitated distress. Senior keepers, rushing into the gallery with heavy-duty containment nets and walkie-talkies crackling with static, watched with mounting, paralyzing dread. Marcus, the head curator, noted the sharp, musky scent of Quito's stress sweat permeating the heavy air. Quito began pacing aggressively, his knuckles scraping rapidly against the concrete floor, his silver-backed fur standing completely on end in the dim light. He completely ignored the bucket of sweet melon tossed into his chute by anxious junior staff. He ignored the comforting, rhythmic vocalizations of his own troop in the adjoining enclosure. His focus was violently, exclusively tethered to the screaming infant in Sarah's arms. The tension in the room was a physical weight, a suffocating pressure wrapping around the throats of the onlookers. Marcus screamed over the din for Sarah to step back, to evacuate the viewing area immediately, fearing Quito would severely injure himself against the glass from the sheer, unbridled panic coursing through his massive frame. But Sarah, paralyzed by the agonizingly conflicting instincts of a mother trying to soothe her inconsolable child and a dedicated keeper trying to understand the sudden, uncharacteristic rage of her beloved animal, froze in place. Then Quito charged the glass again. The impact sounded like a cannon firing within a closed cavern. The reinforced acrylic groaned, bowing inward under the sheer, devastating force of nature. Dust fell from the high ceiling rafters, coating the damp, sticky linoleum floor in a thin, gray film. As Quito raised his massive fists for yet another strike, Sarah, weeping and trembling uncontrollably, finally forced her legs to move backward. But it was in that precise fraction of a second, amidst the chaos of blaring sirens and the blinding flashes of rotating emergency lights, that Marcus noticed something inexplicably precise about Quito's supposed rage. The gorilla wasn't just blindly smashing the glass in a fit of wild aggression. Between the concussive blows, Quito was pressing his thick, leathery index finger against the smooth, cold surface of the polycarbonate, tapping frantically, aggressively tracing an invisible line towards Sarah's shoulder. The realization struck Sarah with the force of a physical blow as Marcus shouted the observation to her. Quito wasn't trying to attack them, he was pointing. He was desperately trying to draw their attention to something their human eyes, clouded by panic and exhaustion, had entirely missed. Through the thick, smudged glass, Quito's incredibly acute primate vision, a sensory gift evolved to spot the tiniest, most camouflaged threats hidden in a dense, shadowy jungle canopy, had zeroed in on a terrifyingly dangerous detail. Sarah stopped, her breath catching in her throat, and looked down at her screaming child. Slowly, with trembling hands, she turned the baby slightly, exposing the back of the thick, sunset-colored woolen blanket draped over her shoulder. There, clinging tightly to the fuzzy fabric, mere inches from the delicate, exposed skin of the baby's neck, was a massive, vibrantly colored tropical centipede. A stowaway from the dense, open-air jungle path Sarah had walked through to reach the enclosure, the venomous creature was nearly 8 inches long. Its dozens of sharp, hooked legs were frantically clawing into the wool, causing an unsettling, vibrating scratching sensation against the baby's back that had sent the infant into an instinctual, terrified panic. The baby wasn't hurt, but he could feel the unnatural, horrifying movement just behind his head. Quito, with his hyper-vigilant senses and deep emotional investment in his human family, had seen the deadly creature, had recognized the threat it posed, and had realized that his beloved caretaker was completely oblivious to the monster creeping toward her child. Moving with a sudden icy clarity born of maternal adrenaline, Sarah didn't panic. She knew that sudden, jerking movements could agitate the creature. Very carefully, she unwrapped her rain-slicked nylon jacket, allowing the smooth, frictionless material to slide down her arm. With one swift, decisive, and fluid motion, she used the heavy jacket to brush the massive centipede off the blanket and directly into a deep, heavy-duty plastic utility bin sitting nearby, slamming the heavy lid shut. The threat was instantly contained. Almost immediately, the frantic scratching sensation vanished, and Leo's breathless, terrified shrieking began to subside, tapering off into exhausted, shuddering hiccups as Sarah buried her face in his soft, damp hair, inhaling the sweet, powdery scent of her safe child. As the piercing noise faded from the room, a profound, sacred silence washed over the echoing atrium. On the other side of the fractured glass, Quito's towering, tense posture visibly deflated. The rigid, corded muscles of his broad shoulders slumped, and he let out a low, rumbling exhalation that sounded like a rushing wind moving through a canyon. Sarah, hot tears of relief streaming down her pale cheeks, carried the now quiet infant back toward the heavily spiderwebbed glass. She placed her trembling, clammy hand against the cool, splintered acrylic. On the other side, Quito moved slowly, his massive, dark, furred arm raising with a gentleness that entirely defied his immense strength. He pressed his enormous, leathery palm exactly against hers, the jagged white fracture lines of the damaged glass framing their connection like a chaotic, beautiful halo. For a long, suspended minute, there was no movement in the sanctuary. There was only synchronized breathing. The slow, rhythmic rise and fall of Sarah's chest matched Quito's deep, resonant inhalations perfectly. The heavy, panicked humidity in the room seemed to evaporate, replaced by a cool, settling calm, smelling faintly of the rain that had finally begun to beat softly and rhythmically against the sanctuary's high windows. The unspeakable terror of the previous hour melted into the cold floor, leaving behind only the pure, golden warmth of profound gratitude and unspoken understanding. What occurred in that sanctuary on that stormy afternoon was not merely an extraordinary rescue from a hidden danger. It was a profound philosophical testament to the hidden depths of consciousness that reside behind the eyes of the beings we share this earth with. We are so often blinded by our own human arrogance, convinced that empathy, deductive reasoning, and fiercely protective love are uniquely human virtues. Yet, Quito dismantled that myth with the same shattering force he used against the reinforced glass. He demonstrated a true sixth sense of love, an acute, vibrating intuition that utterly transcends the biological boundaries of species. He did not see a random human infant. He saw a vulnerable life in distress, a tiny soul belonging to a woman he cherished, and he moved mountains to protect it when she could not. It forces us to look deeply into the wild, unkempt spaces of our world and recognize that the minds observing us from the forests, the oceans, and the sanctuaries are not merely surviving on instinct. They are feeling, analyzing, and caring with a ferocious, beautiful intensity. Quito's fractured pane of glass remains entirely unreplaced to this very day, preserved by the sanctuary as a sprawling, crystalline monument to the day a silverback gorilla taught humanity the true, boundless definition of paying attention to the fears of others. As the gentle rain continues to fall outside, washing the world clean, we are left to ponder the magnificent unspoken bonds that tie us to the animal kingdom, reminding us that we are never truly alone in our capacity to love and protect. If this journey into the heart of Quito and Sarah's extraordinary connection moved you, please make sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share this story with someone who needs a reminder of the beautiful, protective magic left in the world. Now, we turn the conversation to you. Have you ever experienced a remarkable moment where an animal seemed to understand your feelings, sense a hidden danger, or show intuition before you even realized it yourself? Tell us your personal stories in the comments below, and until next time, keep your eyes open and your heart listening.